Well.
Good morning.
Good morning. Our last Indie Talk at 8 a.m.
Last 8 a.m. Thursday Indie Talk. It is a special day.
And we are joined by Trygve Hammer on this special day.
Well, I feel extra special now. Thanks for having me.
We didn't give full context. It's our last 8 a.m. one. Mm-hmm. We're going to be moving it to 9 a.m. We're just doing all of our long form content at 9 a.m.
Yep. Streamlining everything and Tuesdays, Thursdays, 9 a.m. And always make sure starting next week, check us out in the mornings. Going to have a little 10, 15 minute podcast breaking down some of the headlines coming into the day.
So you mentioned, before we jumped on air, you mentioned that, you got stopped by CP, but not because you're working for them. And obviously correct. You were during your legislative run. Big change. What are we doing now?
Well, now I am writing. During the campaign, we started a Substack newsletter.
Okay.
My finance guy said, that is going to be a hobby. You are not going to bring in any donations from that.
Yeah.
Brought in $250,000 in campaign donations from that Substack newsletter. And a lot of people said, wow. I don't normally give to candidates, but I enjoy the writing so much.
Yeah.
That,
here you go.
Here you go. Here's some money. So
wow.
That was nice. And then, afterward, I never had a chance. Election night, we were at the spot and I had a bunch of people around me and I never had that chance to be down, to feel despondent.
Wow.
I made my concession call. I went back in there. I had a bunch of people looking at me and I said, okay, here's what we do now.
Right.
Got to hold them accountable. We got to, get busy and keep organized and go after it. So, because I had to give that pep talk, I never had that moment of being down, and I went home and I wrote about it, and all of a sudden people are subscribing.
Wow!
So took that momentum and started building.
Yeah. So far, I'm not making railroad conductor money, but I also am not beholden to the clock or waiting for a phone call that may or may not come to go into work, and I'm doing what I love.
Yeah, that's huge.
Makes a difference.
I've flown helicopters. I led Marine infantry unit in combat in Iraq, done a lot of different things. The thing I was proudest of in my military career, or that made me feel the best, was I was stationed in Rome. I was at the embassy there when I was in the reserves.
Sure.
Yeah.
And they needed a speech for the admiral to give at a Memorial Day event at Nettuno Cemetery, the American cemetery there in Italy. So I wrote the speech for the admiral. The defense attaché looked at it and went, wow, this is good. He took it to the ambassador. It became the ambassador's speech, except for except for a little bit of it. And then I had a day and a half to finish a speech for
the actual admiral at that point.
So, but I got to get it. I was in my dress blues at Nettuno National Cemetery, and I heard an American ambassador and a U.S. admiral give speeches that I had written, and that was pretty cool.
That's fun.
Did the speechwriter for the admiral actually give you credit, or was did your speech get stolen?
I think there was just a thank you, but the thing was they didn't have that guy was leaving at the time.
Gotcha.
So when you're
transitioning
just in that moment, he's got to move and all that stuff.
Right. No, that's incredible.
All of a sudden, staff isn't quite as available to make those write-ups ready for everything.
So, and right now, the guy in that job, that admiral that I wrote for, is from North Dakota, and I ran into him down in Medora, and his name is escaping me now.
Wow. That's still incredible.
A North Dakota admiral in that job.
So
that was fun.
So I remember you mentioning Substack when I believe in one of our interviews. That's amazing that it's taken off that well.
What is your Substack?
Congrats. Yeah, we're going to dig into this a little bit.
Yeah, it's just Trygve's Substack.
Oh, okay. That's easy.
And it's, it's political stuff, social stuff. I just kind of kept writing almost like I was campaigning.
Okay.
And though during the campaign, I kind of got held back, kind of reined in a little bit. I'm not a professional campaigner, so I just trusted my campaign staff, and they did a good job. But we didn't attack enough. We didn't criticize enough. Which you have to do. You can't just say this is me, you should vote for me. You have to say that's them, and here's why you shouldn't vote for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we never did any of that.
Right.
Really. So another lesson learned.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Very cool. So you said is it local politics, national politics, or just you don't really care? It's more just the issues.
It's been both.
Okay.
I'm working on one right now. Well, a couple of them I have kind of outlined that are more national, but I've talked about, a lot of these things come together.
It's true. Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff that gets shipped in for our state legislature that comes from out of state too, through the American Legislative Exchange Council and places like that.
Yeah.
So,
makes sense.
Yeah. It's sort of like trade is international and politics is all, while it's local, it's also national.
It all has some form of being intertwined one way or another.
We're all connected.
Yeah.
Very cool. Go to trygvehammer.substack.com and you can check that out yourself. So way neat. Didn't anticipate this happening. Very cool. Glad we could talk about that. All right. So go ahead.
I was going to say one other big thing that's happening just recently before we start getting into some national and statewide stuff. There was a big decision handed down in court yesterday for the Nichole Rice and Anita Knudsen trial.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
There. So first off, it was crazy because there was 3 weeks scheduled for this trial, right? The prosecution rested Monday afternoon, just right around lunch time. And then the defense starts theirs. They get a little bit in after lunch, and then they move into Tuesday. And you're like, okay, this is going to be. It was a really long witness, and then you're like, all right, this is going to be a full week of defense. After that witness, they go and they rest their case. And you're like, what in the world's happening? And
one thing that I figured out in diving into this a little bit, I guess the way it plays out is a lot of the times defense doesn't even call witnesses in cases like this. So the fact that they called not just an expert, but at one time they planned on calling an actual potential suspect.
I don't know. I don't think they ever planned.
You don't think that? You think
no?
That was just
I
more
believe
talk?
That was a rebuttal
Okay.
subpoena. If they needed to go there, they had them in the back pocket.
That's fair.
And that's what's the interesting thing about court. And we're no experts. We've learned a lot the last couple of weeks. Is that trials is that they're going and they're issuing subpoenas just in case. Doesn't mean, but they have to have them issued before. Otherwise, they're going to have to try to convince them to come on, and the guy would never have gone with that subpoena.
That's fair, because I know the subpoenas are due by a certain date prior to trial.
It has to be that witness list.
Yeah.
So,
Nichole Rice, not guilty.
Nichole Rice,
some chance you haven't seen yet.
Yeah, not guilty. The probably the biggest takeaway that people, the most aggravation has been issued towards the defense team with the reaction to the verdict. That was probably where the largest reaction I've seen come out of.
Without a doubt. Did you see their reaction?
I did see that. I think part of it is the long wait.
Yeah.
They went through, and another part of it is I think they were surprised.
Yeah.
I think they expected a different verdict.
Yeah. I would agree with you. There had to be a huge amount of stress. And let's also realize for sure Minot, and I don't know, I'm not a historian on North Dakota, but maybe North Dakota has never had a case like that. Or if they did, it's been a long time ago.
Recent memory kind of thing, yeah.
We've definitely had murder trials and all that, but having something where it's not clear cut who did the crime.
Like there's a clear and obvious
and then
suspect.
It's been 15 years, and then you have the national media on it the way that it was. It was definitely a different thing going on there. So a lot of pressure, I'm sure, was released by the defense team there. Not guilty. You got to move on.
Can't blame the family for reacting the way they did by any means. Just regardless of opinion on it, when you're in a situation like that, and
I don't think the family acted poorly.
I don't think they did either. I think the most questionable thing is the actual counsel on defense. Yeah. That, again, this was the biggest case they'll probably ever be a part of in their careers. So
I think a couple of things that kind of go unnoticed is because of the cash bail system, her family was able to put up the whole cash bail.
Okay.
Now, they could afford that. So she was out for those 3 years. There's a lot of people who would have had to go to a bail bondsman.
Right.
And in that case, there's thousands of dollars you never get back.
Wow.
You know?
Right. Yep.
So it's a little inequity in the system there. And if you can't afford to pay the bail bondsman, well, then you're just going to sit those 3 years in jail.
Right. Which would be, to then at the end of those 3 years get a not guilty verdict would be a terrible thing.
Yeah.
Because that's just 3 years wasted.
Would be even more prominent at that point then.
Yeah. Deanne asks, where was Rosa Larson? Why wasn't she trying it? We have not reached out to the Ward County
It's a great
Attorney's
question,
Office. And that's a question that some had. There's different feelings on that, and I'm not going to dive into that. Feedback online from other people that track these type of cases was that they feel, and I don't know. I haven't been in these, so
you're reiterating others' opinions.
They feel like the prosecution maybe was a little bit weak in their deals. But again, like, I have no idea. I haven't seen these things done in other places. I do think that felt like a lot of the focus was on proving why it couldn't be the other suspects rather than proving that it was Nichole. Felt like that's kind of how I felt throughout the trial. And I think that's maybe something, and it'd be interesting. They're not going to want to comment on it. You're not going to get them to sit down on a podcast and actually talk about it. It'd be really interesting to get that inside look at it, but very glad it's done.
Yeah,
I'm glad
it's a relief.
Really sad for the Knutson family because they don't have closure.
Yeah, they don't have
I
that
feel like
relief,
there's still going to be a little whatever hanging over, like who did it? Was it actually Nichole? Blah, 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 blah. But I think overall we just have to kind of move on.
Yeah, because tragically at this point, I don't know. Unless you have some shock confession from someone, I don't expect anything to really come of it now.
It's going to be hard to get a trial against a different person of interest.
Yeah.
And it did show that, low staffing is not a new problem for the Minot Police Department.
Right.
They didn't have a lot of resources to put on the case back then.
I think that affected, honestly. Like, if they had more staff, I'm not here to take shots at the police department. We're going to have an interview with some people with the police department supporting them. But I think that in cases like that, it played an impact.
Yeah. Say you had actually one investigator that was able to just solely focus on this case entirely rather than having 2, 3, 4 other things on their caseload as well.
Does that? And honestly, I'm sure that there's some that are, but I feel like that's a little bit of a national problem with the amount, especially as crime has risen, getting quality people that are trained, that are ready to go. They could be quality people, but are they fully trained? Do they have the experience that they need in those positions? I think that's been a struggle overall. So it's interesting to see it all play out. Yeah, that part was cool. The fact that you had one lady's life that was, her future was on the line, and then you had another family that's looking for closure. That's the part that is not a game. That was like real life things that happening. But seeing the prosecutor and the defense going back and forth and all that was a really neat thing to be able to see play out.
I've said it before. We'll say it again. The defense played the role perfectly.
Yep.
They looked and sounded the part of a defense attorney.
I feel like the online comments would agree.
Yeah.
So
we should reach out.
All right. Yeah, we might try. So let's jump into some national news. We're going to give a little rundown on that, and then we'll jump into some North Dakota news that has been happening. Obviously, there's this legislative session going on. They keep passing bills, like window tint bills, some big things going on. You know what's funny is we posted an article on our website, and we weren't posting it to be anything. The governor signed a window tint bill.
The reason I wanted to post it mainly was because I saw the selfie he took wearing the sunglasses.
Yeah, he took a selfie wearing, being funny or whatever. Overall, there was nothing else. We saw it got passed, and we had talked about it prior. So, and some people feel like that's a big thing. Man, the comments on that were not positive.
Yeah.
They were like upset about it, and it had nothing to do with the bill. It's like, this is the news these days because there should be bigger stuff coming out of Bismarck. And if obviously we're not to the part of Bismarck where, or in the legislative session where the big bills get passed. The big bills are going to get passed in the last 2 weeks. You know, I mean, there's the insulin bill is kind of
things are starting to now.
It's starting to, but we're in the very early stages of governor signing bills.
Yeah.
And so it's just interesting to see the reaction to that. But if you want to see updates like that, go to mydakotan.com. I'm talking way too much. So Kyler, why don't you introduce this next topic?
We have some fun. So Trygve, obviously you ran for U.S. Congress this past year, and you were also a military veteran.
Yep.
So we have some, we'll start with some national stuff. And have you seen some of the Signal chat leaks that have come out in the recent couple days?
Yeah.
Talking about the Atlantic. Yeah.
Yes, I have. And, you know, I've had a TS-SCI clearance with a full scope poly. I've been privy to some, you know, we have systems designed for that kind of communication. You don't use a third party app like that. And then when I saw what Pete Hegseth had put on there, I was really shocked, talking about, you know, sorties and armament and timing.
Yeah.
That really should never have gone out on that system. And the thing that I find kind of shocking, having run for Congress, is, you know, our Senator Hoeven, Senator Kramer, Representative Fedorchak, they would actually look strong if they would come out and give some strong criticism. I think people in North Dakota would like it. They don't want to see bumbling incompetence. They want to see things done right. And you can't, if you're representing us, you know, don't be afraid to criticize. You can criticize your own party. I've done it, and I've taken flack for it.
Because one thing, it's not just that it's one thing when they're discussing the merit of response, but it's another thing when they're actually putting the times that they're going to make the attacks with the planes. They're going to initiate some of the action, I guess, at that stage. That's the really questionable part of it, when they started including that in there.
And the other issue with Signal is it's like, even our city council, if they got together on Signal and had a discussion about issues, and they set those messages to disappear, which you can do on Signal, we wouldn't like that. That would be wrong.
Right.
And some of the messages in that Signal exchange were set to disappear. You know, those should be kept.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
Especially
1,000%.
It's one of those things, if you don't want it to be a record, you should do this in person, kind of deal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was an interesting one. And
so there's a question, and I think it's an interesting one, of whether or not the journalists should have reported it. Okay, let me start there, but let me add context. To be fair to the journalist, he did not get these text Signal messages and immediately release them or whatever. He released them a week or two later after the action had already been taken. And essentially at this point, there is no threat to national security or to a war based off those messages. I think there could be agreement on that. I'm not saying that it wasn't that big of a deal. I'm saying that when he released it at a fair time.
Yeah. The journalist did his job in that regard.
But was it fair when he began to get these messages? Should he stayed on that chat, or should he have said, "Hey guys, you have added somebody that is not part of your team to the chat"? I don't know. I'm just curious for feedback on that.
Well, what he says is that he thought it was a joke. There's no way he would be on this.
No way. Yeah.
Until after it actually happened.
And then it all clicked.
And then, right. And he has also withheld some information, like there was the name of an intelligence officer was identified.
Gotcha.
So, you know, you don't want that guy's name out there, because he could go somewhere and be working for the State Department when he's, you know,
actually doing some other things.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
I think as a journalist, as an amateur journalist, I think he did the right thing. I think this is something you have to report on when you get put into a situation like that, especially if you, I mean, it's an easy shot to take it in administration at that point. I mean, it is what it is. It's one of those, it's a low hanging fruit when they do something like that. It's easy to jump on board with that.
Right.
One.
Yeah. I have been kind of annoyed by the administration's response in that everything is supportive, and you got saying, you know, maybe Signal messed up. Okay. Yeah. That was the time that the Signal messaging app messed up.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
About that one.
There was one idea, and honestly, I could see this one. I don't know that it happened, but because Signal, you can call yourself whatever you want, And so there could have been some intentionality there. That's far reaching, but that one's more like reasonable, but it's still very far reaching.
So just as wrapping my head around it in the moment. So say, because he thought it was a joke initially.
Yep.
So maybe he had a username that was not him kind of deal. So then he thought,
and it's not even a username.
Yeah.
Because the way that it happens is you go and you get to literally make your name whatever you want it to be.
Okay.
So you can call yourself Pete Hegseth if you want. You can call yourself whatever. So it's not, but it's not like at Pete Hegseth 241 because Pete Hegseth was taken.
Yeah.
You just get to call yourself whatever you want. And so there's some theories that, but of course, all those theories are trying to get the administration off the hook when the fact of the matter isn't even the fact. I think the biggest issue is not even the fact that the journalist got added in. That's a huge thing. But the bigger issue is the one that you pointed to. Why are they using Signal in the first place?
Yeah.
That's something that makes you wonder, especially with the scandal that the other side, the Republicans, were upset about with Hillary and the email servers and all that. And that's wrong. This shouldn't be happening. And then on the other hand, you're using third-party software for your messaging of war plans.
You
or
can talk about
plans
it's encrypted and everything, but this feels like it's one of those things that doesn't need to be used on a third-party system.
Well, right. And we, as Americans, sometimes I think we have this hubris that maybe our signals intelligence, our NSA is way better than everybody else in the world. And they are the best.
Yeah.
But other countries are very good at hacking into these things. And so when Mossad went and killed that Hamas guy in Dubai, the authorities in Dubai identified all of those Mossad agents, and they were able to tell where their cell phones were, not just the hotel they were in, but the floor of the hotel that they were on.
Wow.
So other countries have this technical capability.
Right.
So this third-party signal system is not safe.
Not what you want it to be.
Right.
As encrypted as it might be, there are ways around it.
Right.
Yeah, undoubtedly. That's it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I know a lot of blame's getting thrown at National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. I think he was the one that added the journalist onto the group chat. So if anyone takes the real heat for it, I assume it'll probably be him. But
they were trying to. I saw some thread that some conservative writers were trying to get it onto like an assistant. It was Alex Wong was the name that they were throwing out there. But I'm like, Mike Walls is out there saying he did it. And whether he did it or not, you can tell in Signal because you can see.
Michael Walls added you to the group.
Exactly. So that seems pretty obvious, right?
Unless he was having his assistant do it for him, which at that point, that's a whole different bag of tricks.
It doesn't matter. If your name's on it, you're going to have to take responsibility.
Undoubtedly.
Try it out for once.
Then another big thing that just kind of came out the last couple of days, I don't know if you saw this one, Trygve, President Trump made an executive order trying to have states enact voter registration laws with by having mandatory IDs. Have you seen any of that one coming out? I know there's
I saw something.
I don't know what merit it can actually bring to a lot of states. Obviously, North Dakota, we have a very unique voter registration program. We don't have voter registration.
Ours
is so unique, it doesn't exist.
Exactly. And I think ours is fantastic. However, I know there's in a lot of bigger places it might be hard to utilize a system like ours. I just don't know how necessarily with an executive order you can. It's more of a recommendation, of course. I don't think you can force the states to.
My question though is like the way that this works. Sure, maybe for states that works, but does that mean that if you don't have voter registration, your votes don't count for federal elections? I think that's the question that I would have.
Ooh,
because that's going to be that's the way that the Fed, in theory, maybe there's different views on this, but essentially that's the way that the federal government works. When they want something like that's fine, you can do whatever you want. You just can't participate in this federal program, in this federal whatever.
So is there a way they could try to bar them from federal elections then?
Or just not include, barring would seems a little bit strong, but not include their votes unless if they have voter ID, essentially, voter registration.
Now that could be a whole different bag of tricks. And I just find it interesting that it happened right around the same time as the whole Signal chat thing.
Yeah. Well, and constitutionally and by the law, the states run their elections. So
So there still may not be any control, even with that. Right, because and I was thinking about that as I was saying that like you still are voting for your electors to show up. You're voting for whatever. So it's kind of weird. I don't know.
Yeah, especially the way the Electoral College is set up. It has some backdoor things for how the election is actually handled on the national stage presidentially. You're not voting for the president necessarily. You're voting for delegates, and they're the ones that actually go vote for the president. It's yeah.
So is this overreach or not overreach?
I don't think it's actually going to do anything, but I think it gives the image of overreach.
Image of overreach.
Yeah.
Phil's, if you want to answer, you don't have to answer.
Well, it's an executive order, and I don't think it carries a lot of weight.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
that's really
If implemented, probably overreach. In my viewpoint.
Yeah. No, and that's I just don't know how you can actually implement that one. That's the hard one.
Next,
couple other ones from the national stage. There was been a lot of interesting things that have happened to some Tesla dealerships lately. And not just Tesla dealerships.
You went with
cars,
hard
too.
ones today.
I did. I was just going. I was
What's up with this? Who wants to talk about Tesla dealerships?
Well, it's not the dealerships. It's what's happening to.
Right.
I don't know if it's necessarily any kind of instigation from anyone specifically. I think a lot of it is just frustration being taken out, and it's the wrong way to do it. That's my surface level analysis of it.
Yeah, the Tesla, it's a weird deal. I think it just shows the risk people take when they have business to go run for something.
Yeah,
because they're living a fine life.
Run for what?
Yeah, but allow yourself to be involved in something.
No,
you're
right.
You're trying to go in another can of worms,
semantics.
but the point is the same thing. Like, I mean, you go look at Trump, whether you agree with him or not. Yeah, maybe he's getting gains on the international stage and all that, but overall, his businesses took somewhat of a hit. Okay, and then you have Musk in his involvement. Now people are his stock has taken a hit. At first, he was making money off of it. His stock was going up, and then
it's been tanking recently.
And then it was over $400 a share. Now it's mid $200 a share. So I think first off is that the going and actually throwing spray paint on stuff, burning things up. I don't know. That's wrong. It shouldn't be happening. I think we can all agree with that.
Vandalism. Yeah.
Nope. I don't know that it's so, and I would love to hear your take on it. I don't know. I don't feel like though that this is something that has been initiated by people on the left in leadership. Like maybe I missed a comment or something, but I don't feel like people are saying go burn Tesla dealerships.
Yeah.
I think it's just something that people are people, and a little bit that's what maybe there could be things. If anything, there could be things that could be said to stop it. But I think that there have been some things that have been said. So I don't know. I think at the end of the day, it's just
you're always going to have people that take it to the extreme.
Yep. Yeah. But would love to hear your take on it.
Well, for one thing, Musk is just a very unlikable guy.
Yeah, he's good at that.
I have heard from. I have Republican friends. I mean, you can't live in North Dakota and not, right?
Right.
This is true.
And I've heard them say, I did not vote for Elon Musk.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that say
and they're not too fond of all his little boys that he's brought in either.
Yep.
And a couple of them were problematic, including that one who was, fired from his internship for giving company secrets away.
Yeah, sure.
So that's the kind of guy who we don't want having access to our information.
Yeah.
And people are feeling like that. And they also feel like this Doge is giving cover to Congress because if you want to do what Doge is doing, you have hearings and you do it with legislation through the Congress.
Yep.
But the Congress has just abdicated over and over again for so long. And when I was campaigning, I was already saying the executive is too strong. Congress needs to take back their authority. By the Constitution, it's the Congress that has the authority to implement tariffs.
Right. Okay.
They're the ones that are supposed to be enacting this as legislation.
Right. Right. So it should be debated. We should be hearing it. And that's how it should happen.
Right.
And then there's the fact that also Doge has had embarrassing math errors. And then they've claimed that they canceled contracts that had already ended. And it's creating a lot of mistrust. And like I said, it really hurts that Musk is just this really unlikable guy with way too much money.
Yep. Yeah, he does have a lot of money.
I think that's so much of why you're seeing a lot of the pressure on the legal system now too, and the judicial system, is because so much of the Congress has become so passive to the presidential's authority, and not just. I mean, it's happened over the last since Bush in 2002, 2003, when we started going into Iraq. It's just been it's been building before that, but really over the last 20 years, it's really been building. And now I think we're seeing it kind of almost come to a culmination of the Congress just being as passive as they can be to these executive orders, and now to DOGE as well. And I've been a proponent of a lot of the things DOGE has done, but I think you need to, if you're going to do it, you have to enact it in legislation. You have to codify it at that point.
Yeah.
So if you're
that part has to come, otherwise it's pointless.
Exactly. Because also on the flip side, say, in 2028, the Democrats win and nothing's codified, what do you do? And then everything can theoretically just go back into place, right? I mean, but hypothetically, I don't know for sure.
I feel like, and I'm not going to put a year on it, but I feel like over the past several years, the executive branch executive power has just gotten stronger, and I think that's concerning overall. Maybe it goes back 20 years. I'm not trying to trace it back to a certain point with that statement, but I think that's concerning overall, but then it's also terrible for the country, because what we're seeing is when a new administration comes in, they just wipe out everything the previous administration does. That's the first 100 days. Yep. It's just undoing everything. And then you go and you put your stuff in. And then 4 years later, you have another, or 8 years later, you have another administration. And it's not like, it's just tearing down our country at this point. There's no building our country.
There's no bipartisanship to it. It is just a purely partisan effort to revoke you can argue and debate the merit of the progress, but revoke the progress made by the prior administration.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. At least the goals that they accomplished. Yeah.
Yeah. And when the communication, the messaging social media has really damaged politics. Yeah, and even the 24-hour news cycle, when you started getting cable news, did that, but it just accelerated with social media. And then I think that's another thing that make people not like Musk that much, is his buying of Twitter and then being on there and seeing policy discussed or put out on X or put out on Truth Social. Yeah. People want it to come through the proper channels. They don't want to see policy popping out that way.
Yeah. So one thing though that's interesting with Musk, and we've slammed him a couple times. So what's interesting to me about him though is his journey. Okay. So at first it feels like, and I want to hear your perspective, because it feels like at first he would have been somebody that the left would have been excited about because of his push into the EV industry and all that with Tesla and things like that. Is that do you feel like that's true or not?
That was a big part of his customer base. And that's a reason why the stock is going down. And they got beat to better batteries by another company. And I think they focused too much on the Cybertruck instead of on that battery technology.
Yeah, they did. And then it's not directly with Tesla, but with SpaceX, they've done a lot of focus on that. It feels like.
Now I know there's been a ton of recalls with the Cybertruck too. So I'm sure
Cybertruck is struggling.
Anything. Yeah.
I mean, Cybertruck was destined to fail based off of the first time that they showed it off to the world and a rock broke the
window.
The window that could not be broken.
That wasn't the greatest.
That was a bad day.
Yeah. Wasn't the best rollout they could have had with that one.
Yeah, for sure.
The funniest thing I saw about the Cybertruck was that in some cities, raccoons were trying to get into them because they kind of look like dumpsters.
Yeah.
That's
so good.
That's cool.
Yeah. Well, it was silver. So that's you said it's gold. It's silver. They thought it was tin.
Yeah. Got it.
They like tinfoil. Raccoons like shining objects.
Of course.
Right. So we're gonna take a quick 60-second break, and then we're gonna come back and talk state stuff. Is that fair?
I think I love it.
All right. Sounds good. We'll be back in 60 seconds.
In the demanding world of oil and gas, precision, safety, and efficiency are non-negotiable. Unmanned operator drone services revolutionizes how you monitor, inspect, and manage your operations. With cutting-edge technology and expert operators, we deliver real-time data, detailed reports, and actionable insights for our valuable clients. Why risk the safety of your team or waste precious time? Our drones access even the most challenging areas with ease, reducing downtime and enhancing safety across your sites. We take the guesswork out of your projects by offering LiDAR, mapping, and inspection services so that your projects stay safe, on budget, and on time. Unmanned operator drone services, where technology meets safety, precision, and efficiency. Contact us today to elevate your operations. Yes, pun intended.
All right, we're back.
It's time. That was a great ad. If you ever need some drone services, make sure you check out
Kyler's favorite ad.
I love it. It's our best ad we have.
Hey, we're gonna have more next week.
We are. Be on the lookout for that. Kind of transitioning from the national level to state level. We'll have a little fun one. Congresswoman Julie Fedorchak just hosted a town hall event a couple nights ago. Was it Tuesday night, I believe? And
virtual town hall.
Virtual town hall. That's the key word to it. Yeah. Do you have just any takeaways from that on the surface before we dive in a little bit?
It all sounded rather canned to me. It's just different if you're not in person with people.
100%.
And we haven't seen that for a while. We really, as candidates, you do it, and then definitely when you're in office. I was thinking that if I won, one of the first things I was going to do is go to beach and have a town hall.
Gotcha.
I was going to be all over Western North Dakota having town halls in the kind of towns like Velva, like I grew up in, the smaller towns.
Those places that don't see a lot of that national presence, especially.
Right. And you got to be there to answer. You got to stand up and be strong.
Mm-hmm. So do you think, how would you prioritize doing an in-person town hall versus a virtual one? Do you think there's merit to it?
But by prioritizing, I think, what's the balance?
Or that's probably a better way to put it, yeah. Do you think there is merit to having the virtual town halls, or should they prioritize and try to focus on getting them in person, even if it's to a lesser degree?
Right. Well, I think there should always, if you're going to have it, definitely be a video element at the very least.
Sure.
And there's room for those town halls, but I think that it's just in person is different, and we've seen that. I think a lot of people were hungry for in-person meetings following COVID.
Oh yeah.
And it's just different when you get together and read body language, and
it's so much easier to connect with someone.
Right.
That way.
Exactly. And what politician doesn't want to connect with constituents?
Right. Well, at this time of year they don't, but give them 3 years, they'll want to connect again.
Right.
Or all of a sudden this time next year it's a different story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But no, I think if you, in a perfect world, how frequent should a candidate or a representative have a town hall? Should it be like a bi-yearly thing, or like
an in-person town hall where how often should that happen?
Yeah.
I feel like as often as they come back from Washington D.C.,
this is a good point.
They should be able to do one somewhere.
Yeah. Because we have this idea, we elect XYZ person, and they go off to Washington D.C. and they're there for
2 years.
6 years or whatever it is, and they're fighting for us, and they come home on Christmas and whatever, but
the holidays then to campaign.
They're here every weekend. And maybe more. They have a whole schedule where they're there Tuesday through Thursday and here Friday through Monday or something. And that's not to say they're not working while they're here. I'm not trying to say that, but I'm saying they're not always in DC.
Right.
They're definitely in North Dakota a lot.
Yeah, the stigma of them being, just in general, of our representatives or senators being fully in DC isn't as real as it might turn out or seem to be.
So you're thinking like once a month or once every 2 months would be a reasonable.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that I agree with that. Honestly, I do.
I would love to see that.
I think that there's a place for virtual town halls as well, and you alluded to that as well. But probably more on specific topics. You have some votes that are coming up. Maybe that's a time for a virtual town hall.
And that's the thing. There's so much technology we have today. Like, if any time there's a contentious bill in Congress, theoretically, as a representative or a senator, you could host a virtual town hall to get your constituents' opinions on it. I mean, it's one of those things. If you want to really try to bridge some gaps, that would be a way to do it, especially with today's technology.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay, something else that has come out yesterday, Governor Armstrong held a press conference of sorts to talk about phone bills.
Phone bills?
Yeah.
Where's my phone going?
But actually, I said it that way on purpose. It was about using phones in schools, and specifically for kids using phones in schools.
Or not using their phone in school.
Or perhaps not. Senate Bill 2354 and House Bill 1160 are two bills that talk about this. 1160, the bill requires each school board district in North Dakota to adopt a policy regulating student use of cell phones, during school hours, including both instructional and non-instructional time. And then Senate Bill 2354, the bill requires all North Dakota school districts to adopt and implement a personal electronic device policy by August 1st, 2026. So those are very quick summaries. Obviously, whenever you're talking about a bill and you have not actually gone through and read every word, you have to be careful because there may be something in there that's not agreeable.
I found that out.
So we want to just like preface that before we jump into this conversation. But first off, should obviously actually at church last night, the pastor mentioned, it's amazing how things have changed, where it used to be kids could go on a youth trip or whatever and they didn't have a phone or whatever. And now like they go on a trip and the parents are like, they have to have a phone and they need to, and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, it's true. Like, I mean, before you
just went.
Sent your kid off to a camp for a week and you didn't hear back from them until they got back and you both were happy.
And that was fine. That's
just
what it was.
That's what I'm saying. You're like, I don't have to hear from my kid for a week. And the kid's like, I don't have to hear from my parents for a week. And now we're like, give them a phone so that way they can stay connected,
to check in every night.
Something might happen in the next 2 hours to my kid. Obviously, the kids at school probably are not using them to check in with their parents. Mm-hmm. Who knows what they're using them for? Could be just playing video games on their phones.
But
thoughts, should kids be able to use phones at school for, let's keep it to the non-instructional purpose for just having a phone in school?
If they do, I think it should be kept in a separate area.
Gotcha.
I taught science for 3 years. I've substitute taught all over, and they are just such a nuisance. And there are parents who want their kids on that leash. Like if they text their kid at school during the day, they expect an answer, which is really aggravating. And those parents also tend to not show up at parent-teacher conferences too. So it was just such a struggle. And the phones they're bad for kids' concentration. Mm-hmm. Kids cannot. There was an article in, I believe it was The Atlantic, about how kids can't read long books anymore when they show up at these elite universities. Because they haven't.
So we're not even talking like little kids anymore.
Right.
Kids going to college.
They're showing up and they cannot, sit down and read Anna Karenina, because it is so long. So teachers have actually moved to shorter stories and had to make those compromises. So, I mean, I sound like get off my lawn.
I mean,
because I come from that generation of, my brother and I, we'd go out fishing on Lake Sakakawea, thunderstorm rolls in. We don't have cell phones. We go out there. And our parents were sitting at home, not worried at all about us.
Right. Well, so there was, you say that there was a conversation we had with Andrew Nias, and I know that former executive director for the Indy GOP, but there was something specific he said, and that was when he was a kid, he was in this deal, or he basically got told, go get a tractor and jump it. Like you're in the middle of the field by yourself, you have to figure out how to get the tractor working. And it's like so he had to figure it out, or he had to call for help. And it's like, that's something that we've kind of lost. Where it's like, you know what, you're in the middle of the woods, you're not going to die, we know where you're at, go figure it out, go survive a little bit. Mm-hmm. That's something that we've lost because now we have our phone. What would our first reaction be to do is to Google it. If we don't have cell phone reception, we would die.
And I know just one thing too. I've talked to a lot of teachers that are big proponents of this, and it sounds like on a school district level, this would be a lot harder to be implemented just on an individual basis by getting a school board or a school district to implement this. That's why I see such a drive to get it pushed.
Just some feedback on that. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yep.
Okay. So you're saying it's to pass it.
Yes, it should come from the state rather than the individual school districts being the ones to do it. From what I've heard, it sounds like it's a lot less likely for one individual, like the Minot School District, to pass this and on their own outright kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good thing.
I do too, because I mean, I was in school the most recently. 10 years ago, I was in high school, and looking back on it, I mean, if we even were getting caught like looking at our phone in our lockers, we would get in trouble for it. I remember my senior year, I had my phone in my pocket in class and it fell out and I got in trouble for it, kind of thing.
You're a troublemaker.
Now kids are, I mean, it's a whole different ballgame. They're on their phones during class and it's not even like it's that big of a deal. So I think, again, in short, this is something that definitely should be happening.
Yeah, I was in school just 40 years ago.
Yes, I'm the baby.
I get that phone call. And the funny thing is, we all had all our friends' phone numbers memorized too. You know,
right.
And, well, in Velva, I only had to dial like the 8 and then the last 4. So,
Okay,
so it was pretty easy.
Yeah,
and then,
yeah.
and what we've lost also with cell phones is the little brother or sister. You know, you get the phone call and the little brother answers and it's a girl. We don't have that. That never happens anymore. Right. They have their own cell phones.
Yeah. Everything's instantaneous.
Exactly.
Now. Right. There's none of that hidden wall almost behind things anymore.
Well, when I was growing up, I wasn't allowed to get a phone until I was 18.
Fair.
So I was pretty much persecuted. So.
We feel for you.
Yeah, so bad. So yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, do you have another bill?
I wanted to talk about the insulin cap bill that got passed. Yeah, obviously, good friend of the show, Leif Snyder, he passed away. He was a diabetic, and this is one thing that he was a big proponent of. This got passed in the Senate handily just this week. Another friend of the show, Lisa Hermosillo, was down there. She was sitting with District. Where's David Holcomb?
38.
38. Okay, he's the
Senate Majority Leader.
Yep, he's the Senate Majority Leader. She was sitting with him. It was a great little thing. It passed overwhelmingly. I think it has to go to appropriations before it goes to the governor. And I love to see that one got passed.
Yeah, no, that was good to see happen. Probably about time. And then of course the timing of it really probably hit home for a lot of people, at least in this area of town.
In the Minot area for sure. Yep. It's one of those things that it was being pushed, and then when some things happened, it really took to that next step.
Yeah. So I have one that's a controversial one.
Oh no.
Okay, and that's the education savings accounts bills.
Uh-oh.
Okay, so these are ones that we talked. We've actually had a separate podcast that talked with somebody that was advocating for them. But basically, there's a couple bills that are hanging in the legislature right now that would enact a education savings account that would, based off income and just the numbers vary and all that. So $3,500 maybe you'd get, could be more than that, could be higher. One of the bills would go and affect every student. This other one would only affect kids that were not in public school. So if you did not put your kid in public school, then you would get an education savings account. So first off, I mean, you can go into like the actual details and all that, like get into the mire of it. But overall, the overall concept is that parent would be able to go to an online marketplace and be able to buy things out of this marketplace that were approved by the state, whether that's education materials, whether that's a STEM class, whatever it might be that would help the kids' education. What are our thoughts on this? This is something that has some interesting dynamics on it. Start with you, Trygve.
Well, my feeling is government should always work for the public good, right?
Yep,
sure.
And what we've seen with these voucher bills in other states, for example, when you start putting the state money toward that, is that the private schools have upped their tuition.
Yeah.
And there's no prohibition against that, or saying if you want to have this money applied to your school, you need to, you can't raise your tuition by more than the average of what you've raised it over a certain amount of time, or something along those lines.
Sure.
Right. Yep.
And I'm
all of a sudden you have private high schools costing the same as college.
Right. Yeah. And for, most people in North Dakota, our rural areas, they're never going to be able to put that towards private school.
Yeah.
And homeschooling is, it's, if you can do it, it's great. Though I think kids do need that socialization aspect. Mm-hmm. But I had a student, and he had an exceptionally bad homeschool experience. He came in as a 7th grader reading at a 2nd grade level. And that makes a teacher's job very, very difficult.
Especially at the middle school level at that point,
right.
too. Yeah.
Right.
And I don't know. I struggle with this one because on the surface, I think choice is key, and I generally like it, but after we'd done some digging earlier and reading into the state constitution, there is an exception where it says that the state should pay for, paraphrasing, the state should pay for all public education, and it excludes any kind of, not directly private, but at least
It says that they should not use funds designated for public schools for private schools. Essentially, it wasn't.
That's a paraphrase, but
parochial, I believe was the word.
Yeah, that's it. You're right.
But it was not that the government should not spend money. It was that it should not spend money that was already designated for private schools.
Okay, so it's a little ambiguous in that regard, but
I feel like it's ambiguous.
Yeah, I think you can.
I feel like it's more than ambiguous. But
you can interpret it a couple different ways, but I don't know. I think that generally I'm all for school choice, but Trygve, you make some great points, especially with the rural areas, and there's very little access to private school for them, so it would really be it's either public school or homeschool at that point.
Yeah,
right. And you know, there are some things we're a little behind in reading levels since the pandemic, and I think we could all agree on ways to catch up on those things. So I think education's actually a place where if we tried, we could really find some agreement.
Yeah.
And depending on what happens with the Department of Education, North Dakota might have a lot heavier hand in that coming up soon too.
Yep.
I think at least two things on this. One is the raising of the rates is messed up, and you mentioned like it would be the cost of college. I mean, when I was in college, it was not that expensive for college in North Dakota. It was like $6,000-7,000 a year, and based off the testimony of somebody, one of the private schools, already it's $6,000 to $7,000 a year, and then the school is subsidizing it some, which the state is subsidizing the college as well.
Yeah.
So already it's very, very expensive, and it wouldn't be surprising if the rates increase. So that part's terrible. I don't know how they would be able to control that.
Because then you'd have to start like putting caps onto the schools and their private schools, and that starts getting into its own kind of muddy water at that point too.
Yep. The deal with the rural, I hear that, and I can understand that in the current deal, but I'm curious if there's homeschooling communities that are going on throughout the state.
For sure.
Right. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of those communities, if there was a way to easier get it, and there's a third point that would really make it easier. If there became more affordable, that there wouldn't be schools that would start. But there's also another caveat, and a very difficult problem, and it is the requirements it takes in order to get a school set up in North Dakota. So a private school has to still be approved by the state.
Yeah.
And then every single teacher, and this is what's an interesting thing. So the private school has to be approved by the state. The school teachers of that private school have to go and follow the state guidelines. And then the state says, we won't fund it though.
That's fair.
That to me is a weird deal. It's not that the state should provide any funding or have these education savings account. Is that the rules are very strict in order to get a private school set up to increase the costs of the school. And then they're like, we're not going to fund. So I feel like overall the state maybe should just relax on the private schools area. If the free market will work itself out. Yeah. If the schools are not educating, the kids aren't going to or the parents are not going to put their kids there. That's what's going to happen.
Completely.
So I feel like if they just loosen those rules, personally, this is a weird take. I think that the cost of private tuition would come down maybe, and you might even solve some of that problem.
So I hate to answer your question with a question, but could this actually like potentially drive more pub or private schools? I
feel like it potentially, my viewpoint is that yes, it could. But the problem is that there is still the problem is that there's still the part where the state has to approve it. So I know that there's communities I'm part of that probably would consider a private school, but the state is so strict that it's
not worth even setting it up
because it's going to be too expensive.
Yeah. There's no gain from it at that point.
I come from Oregon where our church had a private school and the tuition was astronomically cheap because the church went and really helped out a lot. But Oregon didn't require your teachers to have master's degrees or bachelor's degrees.
Sure. And I think that's fair, especially for the private schools. Because I think you make a great point. If you should be able to probably hire whom you want. And on the flip side of that, if they're not doing a good job and your kids aren't learning from them, odds are either A, they're not going to keep their job, or B, the parents aren't going to keep sending their kids to that school.
Eventually, you would think that would happen.
Yeah. That's kind of where I can see it happening. I can see that. That's a fair point.
I think that would. I think if you made changes there, I think that would have a greater impact of fixing this in a way that people could agree on more easily. Potentially, I know that some would still disagree with what I just said, but more easily agree than going and giving out the education savings accounts directly, which people bring in questions that are some valid. And I mean, you can ask any question you want, but I don't think that they're as valid because the state still has, they get into the deal. So the state's going to start funding Satan schools. Like, okay, good question. But the deal is the state will not fund that teaching. Just like if you're going to a Catholic school, they may not fund the religion part of the deal. They're going to say, we're providing $3,500. That's covering these approved materials.
Because that's the thing. It still has to be approved by the state board.
To the marketplace. Yeah. So like if you're going to a school and they're not teaching you math, English, and whatever, then you're not going to a school. You're going to a school, but you're not going to something that's going to actually get you your K through 12 education.
Yeah. They still have to be an accredited institution by some degree. And
accredited might be the wrong word, but yeah.
They still have to follow a certain level of guidelines.
Yeah. I don't know. That's my take on it. I'm really interested though, but it goes back to with the rural. I am honestly interested to see if there would be more that would start in the rural areas. I know it's hard, Velva, you could reasonably have one, but you go like into the northern part of the state, like there's no town that has more than 1,000 people within an hour. Like it's a bunch of 300, 500 person towns or less. And it's like, well, yeah, I guess probably no private school is going to be going in that area. I think that's when we say rural, that's probably more the rural areas, not the, if like Rugby could have a private school, those places could and pull in people from the outsides.
For sure. Rather than like Cavalier, North Dakota, something like that, where it's a little
small town, then there's no town within basically 45 minutes.
Yeah, or beach, like we were talking earlier.
Or Antler,
exactly, yeah. A mile and a half from the Canadian border, and the closest town is Sherwood that has 100 people in it.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Yep.
And, that one of the things I noticed, you go away from a place for 30 years, you come back, all the changes are kind of instantaneous, right? So all these small towns that lost their schools during that time. Yeah. And the school in rural North Dakota has always kind of been the center, the hub of activity in every one of those towns, kind of the glue that held us all together. So, that most of the shelter belts were gone. The farms got much bigger. The equipment got huge. But all these schools, Upham, Willow City, all these schools shut down. And I think those communities kind of lost something there.
No, you're right. Yeah.
Because now all of a sudden it changes from, instead of Antler having their own high school, now the 30 people that live there all have to go to MLS now. And it obviously you're still going to have your, little camaraderie with your school, but it's it's different from that sense of community you have in community that has their
town
own school.
Pride.
Yes, exactly.
Small town pride.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, you start losing that part.
There was a lot of pride for the Granville Eagles to go beat the Velva Aggies from the bigger town there in basketball.
It's TGU.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. Very, very interesting deal. And, we're coming to end of time. You got anything else, Kyler?
I'm pretty wrapped up. I figured out how to use the Minot Public Library's archives.
Yeah, watch out for that.
That was a blast last night. I stayed up way too late.
So there's some pretty cool things in the archives. So they've gone through and digitized?
Yeah, digitized all of Minot Daily News, the Daily Observer, and whatever the other one in like the 1920s was called. Wow. From like 1888 up to 1991, they have, if not every, at least the vast majority of every paper that's.
So you can go read old news. It's kind of neat.
Yeah,
if your family member was in the newspaper way back when, you can go find out about it, right, Kyler?
If there was some kind of lawsuit with First Western Bank or something, you can go figure out about it.
Sounds a little bit real over there. Well, want to say thank you for coming on today, Trygve. It's been good discussion. Really appreciate you taking some time to do this.
Happy to be here.
Have any last comments, things you want to point out?
Going to see folks in Harvey on Saturday. They're doing their reorg.
We totally did not talk about this part, and we wanted to. Let's talk about it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So 2022, I went to the Minot 4 districts, their convention here.
Okay.
It was at the library. 7 people for 4 districts.
Wow.
I stopped counting at 80
a
couple Saturdays ago as they walked into IBEW for our reorg. I went down and I spoke in Bismarck at theirs. They were expecting 40-some people. They got 306.
Wow. Makes you change facilities.
And people want jobs. They want to take those district positions and they want to actually do something. So, it's really good to see that energy, and because we're not getting the results we want right now, but we're on the right trajectory,
right?
And we're really trying to build things here, and we're going to miss Leif. He was part of our organization here, and a very vocal part of our organization.
That's good.
Great guy, but we're everywhere I go. Same thing in Velvo when we had the District 6. I went down for that one too, and they filled out their slots, and they had about 20 some people there. So
you're starting to see
people are coming out of the woodwork, and there's a number of factors involved in that, but they want change, and they're starting to realize that there's no cavalry coming. They are the cavalry. They got to get it done.
Yep.
That's one thing that it takes to get involved politically. You have to kind of realize that, you want to see someone make the change, but at a certain point, no one's making that change. So when do you step up to at least help make that change?
Yeah.
And I think it sounds like you're starting to really see that with the party coming together now.
Yeah. And it's great fun. And we do things socially as well, not just meetings, because if you just do meetings,
it gets boring.
Exactly. People get tired of it. They stop showing up. Yeah. So, it's almost my new family here in Minot with the Souris Valley down.
That's neat. I told you, what did I tell you? I said on one of either the unfiltered discussions or something, 10 years, man. 10 years, it's going to all change.
A lot can change.
And it sounds like the 10 years that right now, we would all agree that it's very skewed to the right now in the state of North Dakota. And in 10 years, it's going to be, the balance is going to start to be seen again.
You're going to start seeing
because it takes time, and it will happen before then, but I'm talking about like 55-45 stuff, where it's like, oh, this could go either way.
Like you actually have to have some crossing of the aisles to get stuff done at that stage.
I'd be so healthy.
Oh, it'd be beautiful.
It'd be so healthy. Is North Dakota missing that?
Oh, definitely. And any state that has a super majority.
Either way,
Yeah, it really, it creates this inbreeding kind of thing that goes on. And
you sharpen each other when there's competition. It's a good thing. And it balances you out, and it forces you to listen to other viewpoints, for better or for worse.
No, undoubtedly.
Well, again, thank you for coming on. Really do appreciate
happy to be
it.
here. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll have to do it again sometime. As far as for the Dakota, and be sure to subscribe, become part of the Dakotan community. Next time we're be going live is going to be Tuesday at 9 a.m.
Yes, so make sure you're looking for us bright and early Tuesday morning, not in the afternoon. Well, you can still watch us in the afternoon, but if you want to be with us live, 9 a.m. Tuesday. 9
a.m. and then next week it'll be Indie Talk 9 a.m. as well. And then starting Monday next week, we say this, and we're gonna have to hold ourselves to the 7:30 a.m. You're gonna be getting a podcast coming out that's gonna have the news for the new news of the day.
Yeah.
And so it's gonna be our daily brief. You can either read that on our website, listen to the podcast form, or get that delivered to your inbox. So that's going to be beginning this Monday.
Wish us luck.
But lastly, for all the news throughout the day, mydakotan.com. It's your source. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great day.